is going on, everybody? Welcome to another Pixelogic stream. My name is Ian Robinson, and we are doing another How It's Made, where we are making this tank. We're using primarily ZModeler, so everybody who has been asking about hard surface and ZBrush, ZModeler in specific, we actually put a poll out not that long ago, just asking what would you like to see from us, and a lot of people responded with hard surface ZModeler. So we are here to basically showcase how you can make something like this tank simply using ZModeler for the most part. There's obviously some sculptural stuff here within this, like explosions and grass and grounds. However, during the How It's Made, we're going to be focusing on the tank itself. And at the end of this stream, if you follow along with it or you come back and watch it later, you'll be able to make something very similar, if not identical, to what we have here. So, welcome in, everybody. What is going on? Hello, Anna. Hello, Cam. How you guys doing? Yes, tanks. We're doing tanks. We're doing tanks. So, again, this is a How It's Made. So, if you're watching this from the beginning or you're actually watching this after the stream and you weren't able to show up and hang out with us, we missed you, but here we are. We're doing tanks. Leonard, I'm doing great. We're going to be doing tanks. So, usually during my streams, I answer a bunch of questions pertaining to ZBrush in particular. This time, if you're joining me live, let's try to keep the questions towards what I'm doing because we're going to try to make this whole thing. However, if you do have a question about ZBrush and it's a little off topic from what we're doing today, feel free to ask anyway, and we'll get to it more towards the end of the stream. Stream time usually is about 2 hours, but if we go over a little bit, we're going to build it. It's going to be awesome. So let's go ahead and do it, just in case. Andrew, yo. How you guys doing? So let's go ahead and get into it. First things first is I would like to just kind of show the model off just a little bit. We're also going to be covering some BPR filters and renders as well. We showcased a little bit of a Toonish cartoon style render, and that seems to be very popular right now. So I actually built a material and some BPR settings that we're going to drop off in our newsletter. So if you would like to join the newsletter for free, we've been dropping a lot of assets, a lot of just fun stuff for everyone to have completely free. So there's the newsletter. Just join and it'll send you an email, and then when it pops up, so we'll be dropping the BPR settings and the material, but I'm going to build it towards the end of the stream anyway, so you guys can come back and replicate it yourself. And Jay, hello. Welcome. I just want to wait just a couple more minutes as we got some people filtering in, but like I said, so let's actually show the tank off for just a second. So we're going to isolate a bunch of stuff, and you guys can see there's a lot of different just fun little components. But let's actually minimize the rockets just for a bit so we can show off the tank in itself. The tank was built with the majority of just using basic ZModeler tricks and some IMM brushes that we have already installed in ZBrush. So if you look at this, and this is the trick with hard surface and ZBrush, or just hard surface in general, even if you're coming or using another software, hard surface, just like character modeling, it's all about the block out. So we're going to be going over the basic shapes, and we're going to get a lot of this built in. Now, this will be also 3D printed at some point. So we partnered up with Form Labs to actually get some prints done. So I'm going to be printing this off, and once it's test printed, this will also be in the newsletter, and it'll be a miniature. So here's the tank in itself, and then I just built a little bit of a dirt ground, used some dynamics, and then some fiber mesh for some of the grass, and then, of course, some explosions and rockets, which is always fun. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just get started. So again, this is How It's Made, and we are making this tank from scratch. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment down below. So we're going to start off with a cylinder. Now, if you start up ZBrush for the first time, you'll have a simple brush and usually like a cylinder. And if we go ahead and hit Shift F, that turns on our wireframe, or we hit the Poly F button right here. And you can notice here that the poly frame is actually all white. And the reason for this is we're kind of in a 2.5D mode. We just grabbed a primitive shape, we dragged it in, we hit edit, but we have some different options. And the option I want to cover right now is initialize. If we focus here on initialize, you can see we have some sliders that we can actually adjust. So in the very beginning, before we actually start building the tank itself, we actually are going to just play with some of this and get some numbers dialed in. So I played around with what numbers I started off with, but we're going to go ahead and just kind of cover them. So on the H divide, I actually started off with 16. It's a pretty even number. And also 2 allows us to have a mirror and weld, or true symmetry. And then I'm also going to drop the V divide, vertical divide, because we have horizontal and vertical. And I'm going to just drop that to about 3 or 4, which will just give me the basic shape of what I would like. And so what's cool about this is you can initialize this however you would like. And then if we come up to make polymesh 3D, now it becomes an actual object to edit in the 3D space world. But what's really cool is I can come back to the shape anytime up here in my subtool palette. So I'm able to initialize the shape, and then if I wanted a different shape, I would just readjust these sliders to whatever I wanted, and then go ahead and say make polymesh 3D again, and that becomes a new asset. So really just dragging out an object, going to edit, and then initializing, you have more control than you might think. You just got tasked with modeling a tank this week. Ooh, that is perfect timing. So now that we have this shape, what we would like to do, or what I would like to do, and let's actually come here real quick. I'm going to take this tank, and we're going to set this up in the corner so that everybody knows what we're building when they come into it. I'm going to hit Shift F to go ahead and stamp that to the canvas, so that way I can work on a different object and still have my reference. And now that we have this, what I would like to do is we're just going to be building on the kind of gears and the tread or the tracks of the tank. So I'm going to hit W, and I'm going to hold Shift and rotate this 90 degrees. And the reason why I'm doing that is I'm actually going to want to just kind of use a Gizmo trick called, or a Gizmo feature called the extender to actually give me the size of the tread that I want. So I'm going to kind of squeeze this in a little bit. We're just playing by eye at this moment. Now with our side profile, I'm going to hit W for the gizmo. We're going to hit the gear, and we're going to come on over to extender. And extender is really, really cool because we're given a bunch of these cones. And if we grab, we're just going to focus on the orange cone. Don't worry about anything else here. We're just focusing on the orange cone. If I drag this out, we're now getting a new shape just from that cylinder. It's just extending our shape into something that is new and different. TL101, what is happening? We just got started making a tank. It's going to be awesome. So now that we have this kind of shape that we want, this is where our tread of the, I don't know tank terminology, but this is the tread or the wheel, so to speak, where it's going to live. This will be the base of our tank. So we're going to go ahead and just come here, and now we're going to hit accept. And when we hit accept, that's going to give us our new shape. Now this is Control-Z-able, so you can go back in time if you change your mind. But once we hit accept, usually that's pretty much it going forward. Extender is super cool. That's right, Darren. Yeah. Okay, now what we're going to do real quick, I'm going to hit Control-W because I don't really want to live with a bunch of poly groups right now. I would like to just keep things simple. And notice that when you use extender, we have a creased edge right here. And I don't want that right now. So I'm actually going to go to Geometry, Crease, and I'm going to uncrease all. I just don't want to deal with creases right now. We'll get to creases in a minute, but right now there's no point in creasing. We're just trying to get our basic shape. Ideally, like I said in kind of the very beginning, we're just going to be blocking out our character, so we'll get some defining features, but not too much. We're not going to fall too much into detail. We're just getting shapes. Now, let's go ahead and grab our ZModeler brush, because that's the star of the show today, and all the ZModeler brush functions I'm going to be pulling today is going to be very simplistic in the sense of you could do 80 to 90% of your work with only a few different features. So it's not going to be like 100 different menus. We're going to keep it as simple but as effective as possible. So we're going to hit B to bring up the brush, Z for ZModeler, and M for the ZModeler brush. And now, for those of you who may not know how to use ZModeler, or those who are tuning in for the first time after this is streamed, if you hover over an edge, a face, or a point and press and hold spacebar, you're going to get different actions. So as you can see here, as I'm hovering over a face, I'm getting polygon actions. If I hover over a edge and press and hold the spacebar, it's doing the edge actions, and the same with the point, and that will be point actions. So Unlike traditional box modeling, your faces, your edge, and your points are active all at once, and you manipulate them on the fly. So this is what makes ZModeler very powerful. So what I want to do is actually add some more edge loops to give me a little bit more control and also giving me the tread that I want. So I'm going to hover over this edge, press and hold the space bar. We have insert, which is defaulted. I'm going to move to multiple edge loops. And from here, I'm just going to click and drag. And now notice how I'm getting different poly groups here. Let's say I don't actually want that. So I can Control Z, press the space bar, and down at the very bottom menu of multiple edge loops, right down on the right hand side, we have keep groups. So if I click this, now when I drag, it's going to go ahead and keep the group as it's selected, which is fine. That's what I want right now. And I'm going to go ahead and say that looks pretty good. And everything looks to be evenly spaced. So now we're already building the base of our tread. Now, just to give us a little bit more control and to start blocking it out, I'm going to take the gizmo. I'm just going to drag this character or this piece over here. And I'm going to go ahead and mirror and weld. So we're going to go to geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld on the x-axis, which will give us now double-sided. If we hit X on the keyboard, we're now working with symmetry, which is what we are. Boop, boop. Okay, so now I want to just kind of get like a space for the gears, and I would also like to get where the tread will be. So we'll end up extruding out these little bits that you see right over here. So the first thing is hover over a face, and I'm going to choose Inset. Now Inset is a really cool feature because with Inset and with Polygroups All, we're able to click a face, drag, and of course get something. But we need to actually first, before we do that, we need to make polygroups. So let's go ahead and let's go to polygroups, and we're going to go to group by normal. Now this is one way to do it. For group by normal, we're going to get this where we have now all these different polygroups depending on the normal and how it faces. Or what we can do is hold Alt, and we can start making a temporary selection. Just pressing Alt and clicking, and now that will be our temporary selection. And then I can use the Inset method with Polygroup All, and that's going to drag out some spots. Now, notice here on its default setting, we are getting a little bit of weird flipping here, and that's because we have that selected. There we go. So if you ever get any type of like weird selection, like you select this and then you're like, oh, what's happening? Just make sure the temporary selection was where you wanted it. And now we have something like this. This will just give us a little bit of, yeah, that'll be good thickness right there. And now let's hover over that face, grab Q Mesh, Polygroup All, and we're going to go ahead and push this in just to give us a little bit of love. Let me know if I'm going too fast, because that does tend to happen. Could you show me please how to control a support edge crease in dynamic sub-D? All I want to do is bevel and avoid 90-degree for game poly. So you want to use creasing with support edge and dynamic. So basically, if we hover over edge, we'll do creasing right now just for this. We'll grab an edge, spacebar, crease, edge loop. So if you were to crease this and then go to geometry and dynamic subdivision and turn this on, that crease should automatically give you something really, really sharp, because a lot of our creasing is already set. If you go to crease, look right here, our crease is set at 15, level 15. You can actually control this by dialing this down, let's say to 1 or 2 or 3. Now keep in mind that when you're using dynamic subdivision, with it turned on, it's actually displaying what it would look like at subdivision level 3. If I go ahead and hit apply, you'll notice at the top here it does say subdiv level 3. So when you are adjusting any crease levels, which again that would be here under crease and crease level, you're going to want to make sure that this is set at an area below the subdivision that you're trying to work. So at subdivision level 1, you can see now it's kind of beveling off. If I crease it to 2, it's now going to start to do something very slight and minor and almost not even in existence. And then 3 and up is just going to go ahead and just be a nice hard edge. So when working with dynamic subdivision, remember you're working within a technical subdivision level 3 that's being displayed. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue blocking out. I don't want to focus so much on just the inner workings of the shape. I just want to get something that's usable and functional. So, and something we could see that we're like, yeah, that's looking like a tank. Because right now, this doesn't look like anything. Hey, what's up, Dai? So let's go to Subtool, and we're going to actually just insert a new object, and it doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to pick a sphere just to really showcase this. Especially when we're doing hard surface modeling in ZBrush, we want the mesh to be already in our favor. So if we grab a sphere, but you're like, I want something that's a little bit more user-friendly, we have two options. We could do initialize with QCube, which will give us the shape here, which now we have something that's very low poly, 6 sides cube. Or what we could do is hit the gizmo by hitting W, hitting our Gizmo little gear icon, and clicking poly cube, which this is a much better cube for working with hard surface. You see here is 6 sides, but also has edge loops built in, and we can even adjust these by grabbing a cone and saying, yeah, I want something like this. Maybe just go 1 there. So you can adjust this on the fly and get what you want. Where with a Q cube, you would have to adjust that here on the slider. I like being able to just grab a slider or cone and saying, yeah, something like that will work out great. Okay. What's up? What's up? Okay. So now as we move forward, let's go ahead and I'm going to hit this little cog again and go back to Gizmo 3D. And now we're going to come through here and paste it through. What's up, Matt? What's up? Let's say my plan is to control the thickness of crease because right now I'm making a sharp bevel. We'll go over a little bit more about edges and beveling and controlling what kind of crease you get. I have a few tricks for you that might help out. Right now we're going to continue the blackout phase first, but we will get there for sure. Okay, now we have something like this. This is just kind of like the base of the tank. We'll get something a little bit more. What I'm going to do now is go up to not geometry. We're going to go up to Subtool. And I want to actually duplicate this. Now, before we go too much further, let's go ahead and save this out. And we're going to go ahead and create a new folder. We'll call this the live stream version. Boop. And we're going to call this tank blockout. So I treat my hard surface very much like I treat my organic characters. I block everything out first. It just keeps things a lot simpler for me. Oh, hey, what's up, Unstoppable? Hello. Yeah, not a problem. Okay, so now I'm going to rename this part. So we'll call this the base. Just something simple. Now I'm going to go ahead, and if you do Control Shift and D or Command Shift D if you're on Mac, you're actually going to duplicate that subtool. And now we can actually come on up, grab this, and start manipulating the shape the way we would like. And let's go ahead and scale this in a little bit. Now, I'm building this for 3D printing, so I am keeping in mind that things will be colliding, and that's important. When you're building for a certain cause, make sure that you keep that cause in mind. For me, this will be 3D printing, and this will be a miniature, so it's going to be anywhere between 30 to 32 millimeters tall. So we're going to make sure that the geometry is colliding with itself. So that way, when we go to prep it for print, it makes it easier to make it watertight. So now I'm going to go ahead and let's say we need this to be kind of a straight edge here. So let's come down. Now let's take our ZModeler, hover over an edge. We're going to do insert multiple edge loops. Because you can see here, I have this little like kind of cutout here in the middle of the tank right there. And then it bevels off. So in order to make this and kind of control this, I'm going to go ahead and preset that with edge loops here. And let's hover over an edge. We can select polygroup, and then when I click that, it gives me a different polygroup. And that's going to be really important for later. And now I want to create the frame of the tank too. So just like we did with the base as we copied it, I'm going to do the same thing. So we'll call this the top shell. if I can spell, top shell. And I'm going to go Control-Shift-D one more time. And now this will be the, call this the tread framing. Control-W was for polypaint. So Control-W will actually give you a completely new poly group for... No, not for polypaint. Yeah, for poly group. Polypaint is its own, it has its own brush, which is B, P, and A. But we are just working with the ZModeler. So Control-W selects a new poly group. And Control-Z backs it up. Now, to select this edge right here, the way I did that, by hovering over the edge and holding spacebar, I selected poly group. And then that right there, when I click it, it's going to give me a different poly group. Now check this out. I'm going to back this up for a minute. If I click and hold and press Alt, it's going to give me a different poly group. So this is how you can make different selections too. No problem. Okay. So now with this, with the tread frame, we're going to go ahead and move this over here. Now, something to note with hard surface modeling in ZBrush, a little thing that I like to do, I love using masking. I think masking is something that's super important to manipulate edges or points effectively. Not everything has to extrude from a point. So if I press solo, and just for example, let's say I want to actually move this top portion. If I mask it off and hold Alt for inverse, I have control of how tall this could be, right? So if I want this poly group to line up with this poly group, and I did that by copying and pulling it over, but I want it to be taller, that's how I would go about doing that. Or what you could do is, if we hold solo for a second, hover over a face, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead quickly, do a tint select by holding Alt. If I do Q mesh and I start dragging this out, if I hold Shift, this is another way in which I can extend it without manipulating anything else. And I didn't have to add another edge loop. So it's really about how you want to go about doing it. But sometimes for me, I'll find it really easy to just mask off a section and then just manipulate that section. So there's a few different ways you can do that. And actually what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to go ahead and do multiple sides by masking off just the middle. And then I'm going to be squeezing that part in like that. And now we'll actually clear this mask and we'll bring this out. Let's look at it on the side because we want this to actually frame our tread just a little bit. Boop, something like that. And now, of course, we're going to hit mirror and welds. I have a shortcut for that, but again, that's under geometry, modify topology, and mirror and weld. No problem, no problem. Okay. Welcome in to anybody else who's new. This is a how it's made where we're making this tank right now. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask as we go along. But the goal is to make this tank by the end. And if I go a little fast, please let me know. But yeah, okay. So now we have this portion here. I'm actually going to mask this section off and bring this down just so I know it collides. And now we're actually going to be focusing on just getting the rest of this built out. So let's bring in a new piece of geometry. And we'll keep this towards the top. We'll insert a new cylinder. Or, remember before when we did this cylinder right here, where we had manipulated this at the beginning and then initialized it? So we can actually come in here. If we go insert or append, our cylinder will actually be there waiting for us. I believe this is the right one. Is this the right one? That is not the right one. Boop. So let's go append, and it should be that one right on top. That is not the right one. Okay. The other way you could do it too is just come up here, go copy, and come in here and go paste. Now more than likely, actually, it's probably this one that's right in here, the cylinder 3D. There it is right there. So it's right there in the list. It takes over the original spot. So that would be where that's at. And you can see there it is, nice and pretty, and waiting for us. And now we can use this shape because, again, this is truly the way we liked it in the beginning, and we're going to apply a lot of our shapes based off of this. Yes, actually, this is currently being recorded. Edgar's, hello. This is currently being recorded, and you'll be able to watch it later. So, absolutely. In fact, our plan is to, once it is... All of our live streams that you're witnessing right now on the channel always get recorded and wind up on our YouTube channel. So, real fast, let me just walk over there real fast. If we go to YouTube and you were to type in, oh look, we're right there. If you were to type in Pixelogic or ZBrush, you come up here. Every time we go live, we have playlists that cover that. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and paste it for you. But you can see here, we did quite a few. Yesterday, we actually had Wanda for an image breakdown. This was an amazing interview, especially if you're covering any type of collectibles. So all of our stuff definitely gets recorded. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that there for you. Sussy tank. Sussy tank indeed. Okay. So now we have this guy right here. And we're going to go ahead and actually start building up the main body shape of it. So we're going to expand this up. And I'm going to go ahead and just squeeze this down so that it gets kind of what I'm looking for. And you know what? We might actually make some little changes here and there too. Because the idea of the stream isn't to make the exact perfect tank. We might take a little bit of creative liberties as we build this up. So, just, you know. Feel free to play with your own designs. Now I'm going to go ahead. So this would be the base. And I'm going to go ahead and I can either Control-Shift-D like before or hold Control and duplicate. And then extend this up to get the main shape. If you duplicate, that stays within the subtool itself. But it is a quick and effective way to go ahead and kind of get your design blocked out as fast as possible. And then if you do have it masked, if you hit Control W, the mask selection will become its own polygroup, which is good. Hey, what's up, Snickles? Welcome in, welcome in. Okay, but I like to keep a lot of my parts separated. Gotta keep them separated. So we will split that off. That is just me, though. Feel free to work in your own space. Okay, so we're gonna call this the cockpit. Boop. And then this will be the cockpit frame, or base. That way I kind of know what it is, and it makes sense to me. Okay. Now we have this guy. What I'm going to do as well, actually, is a little ZModeler now, because I don't want this to come straight down into the design. I do want a little bit of, like, structure, and I want it to look like it spins. So, we're going to go ahead and hover over Edge with ZModeler. Make sure we have insert selected, and I'm just going to go ahead and do my own single loop, and I'm going to place a couple where I would like them to be. I also want to show you something really, really cool. If you would like absolute control and full customization on where you put edge loops, if we mask off the whole thing by holding Control and clicking our empty canvas, mask the whole thing, hold Shift and Control, or Command if you're on Mac, and grab Slice Curve. Usually Slice Curve will go ahead and slice through a different polygroup, but if it's masked and you do the Slice Curve, it'll actually create a new edge loop, which is really cool. So, a little gem, so to speak. What's up, Brian? What's up, Skull? Hello! How's it happening? Is there a way to hide active subtools with a keybind without having to click the eye on icon? That's a good question. I don't believe so. I don't know, can you even... You could set it up as a hotkey, yeah, actually. If you hold Control and Alt and hover over that eye, click the eye one time and say, let's go, what keys do I even use? I use all of these keys. Let's do K. Yeah, that's fine. It'll say it's assigned to something else, say OK. Now if I hit K, that will hide it. It might be a little hard to see, but you can see here, K, it hides it. So yeah, that's how you would do it. So there you go. But be careful with that, because you can see here that did it for one, that did it for 1. So this doesn't quite work the way you think. So I would say probably not the best way. A good shortcut to do, though, is to go ahead and hold shift and click all of them to hide them all, or hold shift and click the eye to then bring it back up. So, but solo's your best friend. And with solo, you can create from there if you would like. Click that, Control Alt, hit K, say yeah. And if you want to tab solo real fast, you can see what you're looking at, then hit K again. I would prefer that method. Okay. Actually, that's a really neat one. I think I might use that more often. So let's go ahead and grab this guy. And now, like I said, I want this to kind of look like it's a bit functional, like it spins or rotates in the actual 3D print prep, which will not happen today because we're just building this thing. But we might be able to come up with something kind of fun. Let's go ahead and hold Alt, tap that a few times. Hover over the space. Again, we're just using ZModeler, Q Mesh. And we're going to go ahead and punch that in just a little bit. Like that. So now, as you can see here, we get like a little bit of a cool shape. Yeah, no problem. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do, so like I said, we're going to be doing this window frame right here, and then we'll be doing some beveling on top. So we're going to go back over to Insert. So again, holding over an edge, space barring that out, multiple edge loops, whoop, whoop. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag out some loops. Something like that. Sure, why not? And now let's go ahead and get this frame built. So in order to build this frame, we're going to turn on X for symmetry. Let's save real fast. I'm an avid saver. You can either save that way, or if you hit... Yeah, there we go. Perfect. I'm an avid saver. Just save it. Save a lot. Or you can come on up here to this quick save if you want the quick save, and then that will help you out. I like saving. That's my preference. Okay, let's go ahead and now, holding Alt, create a temporary selection for this window. And actually, let's come a little lower. I want this right here. We can always change this position, but maybe I'll go a little bigger this time. No, let's not do that. Let's do this right here. So I'm going to hover over this spot, and I'm going to actually start with inset. And the reason why is because I want to build a frame for the edge of this to work. And I can already start that process here. So inset will allow me to do that. Then hovering back over this edge, going back to Q Mesh, I can push this in. And we'll do this a couple times. We'll do a push in to give us a controlled edge loop, another push in, and then one more, which that edge loop right here will now become a supporting edge loop. So if you have edge loops really close to an edge and you hit D for dynamic, say yes, gives us a temp subdivision. You can see here, I'm getting some nice creasing, or not really creasing, but I'm getting not such a huge fall off. So if you notice here, there's no supporting edge loop up here. So when I hit D, this is just kind of like, it's kind of just breaking on itself, right? But if you notice right in here with these edge loops being so close, when I hit D, it's showing that dynamic subdivision. It's actually giving me a little bit of control. You can see the poly groups is where they're ending up, and that's supporting the edge as best as it can. And the closer you get to an edge, so let's click this one. Let's go just single. Let's drag that. The closer you get to an edge, the more support that's actually going to give you. So we can get that kind of like really, really sharp if we want. So going back to that creasing option, if you would like to work with creasing in dynamic subdivision, but you don't like how sharp it is, that's another way that you can control that. We can actually come in here and say, let's add in a edge loop here, really control this spot here. Coming in, now I'm just adding edge loops. So when I hit this, look how sharp that becomes just in that spot. Now you want to be careful that, of course, you might be causing creases in other places, but that is a way that you can do that. And actually, I really like the way this looks. I like how round that is. Cool. We'll add it a little bit more like that. Then we'll add some support here, and a little bit of support there. And that's too much. You see what I mean? So just play with it and see which kind of results you get. I fall on the sword of beveling, and we'll get to beveling very, very soon. Now here, I'm actually going to go ahead and hold inset and control this inner ring just a little bit more. Yeah, that's giving me a little bit better result. Again, if you're doing an action, you tap Alt. That's going to change the poly group, so that way you don't have similar groups with each other. And that's already given me a lot. Perfect. Now I'm going to take this, go here to Q Mesh, pull this out. Actually, maybe let's get a little fancy. Inset this guy just a bit. Yeah, like that. And then let's Q Mesh it out. We'll do a little bit, we'll pull it out, and then a little bit more, giving those supporting edge loops. Boom! That's giving us a little bit of a window. And you can make that as thin or as thick as you want, completely up to you. But now, if I want to control this kind of fall off in this rounding section, I'm actually going to go to Insert, and I'm going to create a few multiple edge loops on top. But I'm deliberately going to delete an edge loop, and then I'm going to show you a really cool trick to give you kind of a wraparound. Can you import this into Maya or any other place that you would like into the world? Absolutely, you could. All you have to do is when you're completely done, go to Export. You can export OBJ, FBX, STL. I highly recommend that you export out FBX. And then when you do, you would say, yeah, let's go ahead and hit Save. And then you'll get this option, say all, selected, or visible. And then if you do visible, it'll basically compile everything into that FBX. And then you can import that into other programs like Maya, Blender, etc. So, absolutely. Oh, thank you. Now, the comic book render we're doing in ZBrush, we're building a material within ZBrush, and then from there, we're going to render specifically into ZBrush. So anything that supports a ZBrush render would work. However, this one is a little bit more focused to getting something within ZBrush. Oh, thanks, Nugent. Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, beveling. You guys are going to like this. This one's cool. So if we hover over an edge and hold Alt, and if we have Insert selected, it deletes. It's gone. It's gone forever. That's it. Never do anything else. But I want to round this off. Now notice if I hit Dynamic Subdivision, we are getting kind of a nice rounding effect because now our geometry is flat, angled, down, right? Flat, angled, down. But let's say I want to control that. Well, this is where multiple edge loops really comes into your play, because if you hover over an edge, holding spacebar, with multiple edge loops supported, here on the second window right here, we have specified elevation, interactive elevation, and smooth elevation. And we're going to pick interactive elevation because when you start to click and drag, you're adding all these edge loops, right? Up and down adds edge loops, but if you go to the side, you now can actually control and get a bevel that you would like. A nice rounded bevel. So I'm actually going to do something like this. So then when I hit D, it is now very much controlled. It is not just a pure fall off. If we actually have edge loops that's supporting the actual shape, it's much better than going through and adding a line and then maybe masking off this section and then coming in and trying to inflate that, which that is one way to do it, but this is much faster to do it that way. So that's a really cool feature. So again, that's just hovering over an edge. Let's back that up for a second. Hovering over the edge, multiple edge loops with interactive elevation selected, dragging that down, and then flaring it out and finding the shapes that you want. And let's go something like that. Now, like I said, D, boom, that's a much better fall off. All right. Now, I'm actually not really digging how thin this is. I want to expand it up just a little bit more. So with Q Mesh selected, what I really like about Q Mesh is that you can actually grab a face, and when you start to drag that out, it's going to snap to the nearest edge or face. And then we can actually give a little bit more of an extension on that. So for something like this, I actually want to create this a new poly group. so that we're only doing the outside. And that gives me just a little bit of a thicker line. Let's get rid of this end line right here. We don't need that. Come back to a single, and let's do a little bit of control right there. I want to bevel this the other way, so let's actually delete some of that. Yeah, there, that's a little bit better. That's cleaner. I like that. So again, it's all about just like having fun with it and figuring out your shapes. Okay, if we're not going to add more details, can we keep dynamic subdiv instead of adding more subdiv as levels? Does this affect our last render? So you can keep dynamic subdivision all the way through. If I have dynamic subdivision and I hit Shift R to render, does not affect. It won't like all of a sudden skip down to this low version. No. So if you're rendering in ZBrush, you can keep dynamic subdiv all the way through. You never have to go to true subdivisions unless you want to. I rarely go to true subdivisions unless I'm ready to send it off and I need that high fidelity, high detail. Then I will go to real subdivision. But for what we're doing right now, especially something very low res, low topologies, very stylized, nah, you don't have to work with anything other than dynamic subdivision. So especially with working with stylization, you know, we're making something that's cool. And if you're working with game-ready models, you know, as you're building up, and if you have good, clean topology, this will be your low already. Then you don't have to worry about anything else. So, again, as long as you're building nice, clean topology, you should be fine. So yeah, stay as low as you want, for as long as you want. Tell me what you want, what I really. Okay, right, edge right there. Edge right there. Actually, and that's why I love this trick here. I'm just adding edge loops that end up towards the edge to give me some pretty decent control of its fall off, so that I have nice sharp edges. So you see right there, this is dynamic subdivision right here. These little points, these are my normals. So when you hit D for dynamic, yeah, and you zoom in, you're like, ah, there's my normals. You see it all, just displays. We're already getting something really cool. Yeah, no problem. All right, let's go ahead and save one more time. I think I've saved a lot. All right, let's move on forward. So we're gonna go ahead and get a little bit more blocked out before we start messing with these guys over here, but I think we're gonna start getting into some fun little details. So we're now going to create the cannons, and the cannons themselves that'll make it look like a tank. So same thing. So let's go ahead and let's go to insert, and we're going to go ahead and pick the cylinder that we manipulated in the very beginning, because again, that's just our best friend. You might as well work with what you got, right? Let's go ahead and move this here. Does anybody have any questions so far about where we've been, what we've done? I don't want to go too fast, but what I love about hard surface modeling is very much a rinse and repeat method. So anybody can do this. It's just taking some basic controls and working with, you know, a couple different tools, and then just repeating that action over and over again. And then telling a story. That's the most important part. So again, I have modified topology, mirror and weld, so that I am working with two of the same. And let's actually space this out over here. Loop. And let's pivot this out a little bit. I don't like them truly straight. That's a style choice. Also, it just makes sense. So here, go solo mode. We made a shortcut a few minutes ago. And now we're gonna go ahead and do a temp selection. Hover over the space, inset, so you can already see the repetitiveness. I can't speak. Tap Alt. And let's go ahead and actually, so I don't know if you guys can see it, but right here, it looks like it's two different pieces. But because we were 3D printing this, it's actually one piece. And I just chose to make it look like it was deeper than what it is with just painting. So what I did was I inset an edge, and then I inset another edge. giving me some wall thickness. That's a little too much. Let's come here. Let's do something like that. There we go. Then we're going to do something like this. Tap alt to give me this kind of shape. And now what I did is I hovered over this face. We went to Q mesh and we actually pushed this in a couple times to get some supporting edge loops, right? And then here, just with this, just drag this out. And then I just mask this section off. Get that little icon right here, the mesh center, unmasked mesh center. Click that there, boom. That's following that normal. Let's give me something like that. And of course, we're gonna go as big or small as we would like. Now, I will tell you a really cool trick that I've done a lot is you can inflate or you can expand something. So if you wanted to kind of expand this up, make it like kind of grow the walls a little bit, the inflate trick where you hold control and drag that out, that's a pretty cool trick if you wanted to like kind of make the walls a little bit thicker. Just, you know, keep an eye on your edges, make sure your edges aren't breaking, and if they are, you can kind of go in and fix that. But with that right there, just kind of make that just a little bit bigger. Let's do local sim and let's drag that out. There, it looks tiny. They're looking a little bit better now. There we go. ZModeler is difficult for you, but you love the sculpt. Well, Andre, let me tell you that after this video, if you want to go back over it, or if you have any questions, ask me. But ZModeler, the thing to remember when using ZModeler brush is that unlike other software that does hard surface modeling, where the vertices or the faces or the edges, they're all on different tabs and you're working with those individually, ZModeler is allowing you to see all of the vertices, edges, and faces simultaneously. And the thing to remember is that the spacebar is your best friend. With the spacebar, ZModeler wouldn't really be as powerful as it is, right? So with the spacebar, you hover over that edge or that face or that point, and then you press and hold the spacebar, and you could tell what options you are because we have polygon actions, click here, point actions, or edge actions. And while we have a big menu, there's so much here, the way I like to think of it is your options for control are this top menu. This very first one is the action in which you would like to do. So if you would like to crease an edge, or do nothing, or extrude an edge, or, you know, convert your polygroups, first select your action. So this is number one. Number two, what is that action targeting? What is that action going to do for you? Are you going to be working on a single poly, or are you going to be doing all your polys? Are you going to be doing any polys that are islands? Again, these are the action, and then the bottom ones, depending on what you select, will be essentially just a little bit more control or manipulation of the target itself. So kind of look at the menu as step 1, step 2, step 3, and in this case, step 4. So 1, 2, 3. You're always going top to bottom. That's the easiest way to remember it. So again, with the face, I first want to say, oh, I'm definitely wanting to use Q mesh or extrude. They're essentially the same function. The only difference is Q mesh actually is a lot more powerful because what it will do is it will detect other edges or faces, and then it will try to actually connect the two or allow the two to interact with each other. So you can get some better shapes. It's not just a simple take a face, pull it out, and you're done. That's what extrude does. Q mesh pushes it a little bit further. I don't know how many. Thank you. You come from Maya, so getting confused, getting used to hard surface in ZBrush. Absolutely, no, 100%. And actually, this is why we're doing this how it's made, because we're specifically wanting to make sure that our current users and new users and people who are coming from other software can come in and start using it. Because ZModeler is super powerful, and it's just a brush. It's one brush, and it does all of this. So I'm glad I can break that down for you. Let's see, is baking texture necessary in this kind of model? Only depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build a game asset, yes, eventually you want to bake your textures because you're going to need all your maps in order to bring it into a game engine. But again, that's very dependent. For what we're doing today, 3D printing, no. We're just building for a toy. We don't have to worry about that stuff. But it is important to keep your mesh as clean as possible while working. Making a hard surface model with help of modeler. Can use that in games. Yes, you can. And what if I use subdiv and then I have to use it in games? So if you're using sub D, dynamic subdivision, that's just giving you a preview of what that model's going to look like. Here I'm using dynamic subdivision, and this is giving me a preview of what subdivision level 3 is looking like. So the thing that you'll remember is that if you get your model looking as clean as possible, this will be your base, your low poly that you would then, basically have to hold all of your maps and all of your, once you go through the baking process, this is going to hold all that. The dynamic subdiv, once you apply that and get the high resolution, you'll know that the low resolution supports that. So if you build the low resolution in mind with holding on and making, holding on to the maps and projecting the high to the low, because you're building that mesh from scratch, essentially you should have full control of it from start. So if you build like this tank and you want to bring it into a game, you already have the low model built. Once that gets approved, then you just subdivide it up, you put in all the little details, you make your maps, take it into whatever software you need to in order to push it further, and then after that, or sculpt all your details on the high res here, generate your maps, and then your low should hold it. So yes. Perfect. Okay, awesome. All right, here we go. So we're back to making this cannon guy. This cannon guy. This cannon guy. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So let's go ahead and now we're making this pretty big. Okay, so one of the things I'm noticing right now is I like the size of this cannon that I have going on here. But I'm noticing the window is a little low. That's not a problem. We're going to go ahead and isolate this for a second. And remember, we had talked about masking. Soften this up a little bit. We can actually isolate this inwards, and we can actually bring this up a bit. Because again, this is just a little mesh. So let's bring that back. We can even squeeze that in, get that shape. There we go. Now we have a little bit more space to work with. Let's actually bring it up just a little bit more, and maybe we'll expand it just a little bit more. There we go. Cool. Nice. Now we're going to be giving this a top, so I actually don't mind that this is a little smaller. But again, if I wanted to expand this portion here, just mask this section off, holding Control, selecting Alt, which will give me the inverse mask, and then I'll bring this back down. Maybe soften it, Control Tap, bring that back down. So we have control of how we want that to look. Actually, I like that better, so let's stay with that. No problem. Okay, now let's finish making the cannon portion of it. Right, we're almost an hour in. We might go a little bit longer because nobody's streaming after me, so we might be able to push it a little bit more. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and now I'm going to Q mesh the shape just a little bit more. And again, I like to keep things as simple as possible. So I'm just going to take my mass lasso, holding Control, coming up to my brush palette, mass lasso. I'm going to mass lasso this section here, holding Alt will inverse that. Okay, I'm going to hit that little location icon, and we're going to just expand from the center, which will give me a natural bevel. And now from here, I'm just going to drag this out. Boom. We're already getting something really, really cool. And now let's actually come in here, do a temp select that's holding Alt and selecting. And then let's go to Inset. And now we're going to make the very center of those holes. And again, we're keeping 3D printing in mind, so when I push this in with QMesh, or let's even just do extrude this time, just so you can see what extrude does. Boom. There you go. That pushes that in. And then I'm going to do insert multiple edges. I'm going to turn specified evolution back on, which is defaulted at 0. So that way I could just add some edge loops here and here. Now, real quick, if you draw out multiple edge loops and you want to repeat that exact amount of edge loops somewhere else, just hover over an edge and left click that one time, and that automatically generates the exact amount of edge loops you did the first time. So you can come through and actually just start tapping however you want, wherever you want, and this will happen. So you can get more edge loops that way quickly. And I like to do that, especially when I know I need it to be a little bit higher resolution. And notice too, that actually worked with QMesh. That pretty much works with most of the ZModeler functions. If I were to do a move and then start moving that and then click press one time, it's going to do the exact same movement. So, but now I have a little bit more resolution, and this in itself is only about 1,092 active points. So this is very low, and it gives us what we want. Perfect. So you can see here, we've already have now the blocked out basic shape of the cannon, and let's actually start giving us a little bit more fun and details. We'll make some fun gears, and hopefully by the end of this, you guys will see how just ZModeler can be really, really functional. So let's actually add in a edge loop. Oh, let me actually do one thing real quick too. Hovering over an edge, multiple edge loops. I want to cover one little trick with this as well, and that is when you want a perfectly centered edge loop. When you have edge loops selected and you click one time with multiple edge loops, it is generating the center of the mesh and where you can place that edge loop. So it's going to determine the two edges that you have in between the edge that you've selected. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's going to determine this edge right here, and it's going to determine this edge right here. Now, so when I click in between, it's going to isolate and look at this edge and this edge. When I click here and I click one time, it's going to already center that. But sometimes if you drag out like middle here and then you're like, okay, I want to do this, it populates the exact amount, or you can't just, or you're just like, oh, it's not doing exactly what I want to do. What you can do is hover over the edge, click, drag it out, and then go back to single and let go, and that will give you an exact edge loop right in the middle of that poly group. So again, that's just clicking, dragging out, and then coming back to one, then letting go. And then you can repeat that action multiple times, and you are done. Mirror and weld it, boom, done. Bada bing, bada boom. So there's so many little things like that, so which is helpful. Sir, what is a suitable poly count for AAA title games? That's a great question, and honestly, the best answer is whatever the studio sets for you. So if you're going to be working on a AAA title game, you're going to be given a restriction, typically. The ones I've set up for animation, they did that. They said, hey, this character cannot exceed 20,000 polys or 50,000 polys or 200,000 polys. It really depends on the character. Is it a hero character? Is it going to be an NPC? Is it going to be a background prop? A lot of things go into that, so there's no one number. However, what I can say is you can basically kind of default to, if it's a triple title game and it's a hero piece, you can probably get away with about 100 to 150,000 points. Some games might go higher than that, some might go lower. Again, it's not a precise number, but what I would recommend is look up go on ArtStation and look up game-ready models for AAA. Look at the Call of Duties, look at the God of Wars, and look at their breakdown and get an idea based on that. Again, it's really going to be up to the studio and what they can handle because of their game engine, the way they're wanting to go, how they want to use the character. A lot of things come into deciding that number, but what I can say is if you can keep it as low as possible, but still able to capture and bake the details from your high to your low, then you're pretty good. But again, I would do a little bit of research, look at what's happening right now. I'm not in a AAA studio. I've never worked for a AAA studio. I've only freelanced for animation teams, and they just they just gave me a number. They were like, make this character under 100,000. Don't exceed that. And you're like, okay. And that's everything, depending on what it was. Luckily for me, it was a dinosaur. Exactly. There's just so many little factors. But like I said, I would go to ArtStation, look up games that you know are AAA that have already been that already exist and that are allowing their artists to publish in their portfolios. And when in doubt, just ask somebody. You know, you'd be surprised how fast you can actually get information. If you're like on Twitter and you follow an artist, you can ask them, hey, what does your studio recommend? And that's the question to always ask too. You know, just to anybody's in the studio. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm now rambling, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's create some gears, and then let's get this frame of this tank built in. Or scratch that, reverse it, let's go the other way around. So we're gonna do the frame, and then we'll create the gears. And then we'll create like the little nubbins. So with the frame selected, I'm actually gonna mask off this first portion and this back portion. I'm going to go ahead and hold Control, tap in the middle, and get that kind of on the edge here. And now I'm going to, just with my Gizmo, bring this down. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to go on the top view here. Going to invert that by hitting Control and tapping one time on the outs. And then I'm actually going to just line this up as close as possible to this edge here. Because again, I want this to look like it's made from the same piece, but it is not. It's two different pieces. We're going to mask this top section off. I'm going to bring that down in alignment. You can zoom in here and get that as close as possible. Now refining that a little bit. There we go. Boop. Hey, what's up, Daisuke? Everybody, say hi to Daisuke. Awesome, awesome artist. He's also a Pixel streamer. He also works for Maxon, so say hi. You want to know things anime? That's the guy. That's the guy. That's him. Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to refine some of these edge loops here. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of control this a bit. Just masking off a section. You know, if we don't like something holdover, let's delete that edge loop. And let's just build those edge loops right there, like meow. Like meow. And then mirror and weld X. And there you go. I should make a bunch of LODs for assets. Oh, should I make a bunch of LOD for assets? Because we can't show one model at a time in ArtStation. Yeah, I'd say make as many as possible. You know, like if you're looking for portfolio tips on like definitely for AAA studios, I would look up what AAA studio artists are releasing in their portfolio. That's a good indication. But I mean, when it comes to portfolios, what I always say is show off what's important, show off how well the character or the prop looks. Make sure that everything in your portfolio is purposeful. So if you have a lot of, you know, UV maps, if you have a lot of UDIMs, like lay them out, make sure it's all important. So that way when somebody's looking at it, they're getting all the correct information about what that is. But it never hurts to give as much information as possible. At the end of the day, you can almost not give too much. Don't quote me on that, but I like to give always a clean render, a breakdown of the character, a clay render, and then if it is animated, I T-pose it and then I show it in pose. People relate to things that are posed, so it's helpful, but yeah, you can't go wrong. Depends on the asset. Modeling is time consuming. I don't know if that's helpful. Modeling is time consuming. But it's fun. So if you enjoy it, do it. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're now going to move forward. We're going to go ahead and select. Oops. I meant to do that. We're getting some good poly groups here. I'm going to go ahead and hit solo. I'm actually going to give this bottom side a different poly group. So we're going to go ahead and say polygroup, all. We're going to make this one completely different because I don't want that to change. In fact, if we would like to ever remove a polygroup, what you can do is hover over the polygroup color that you want. So let's say I want all of these yellows to be this red. You're going to hold Alt, click one time, let go of Alt, press Shift. I'm going to repeat that action. You're just going to hover over all the ones you didn't want. And that will give you that. So I'm going to do that one more time because I feel like that might have been a bit much. So let's hover over a face. Let's say we want all of these yellows to become this kind of light red color. I'm going to hold Alt, which gives me a temporary polygroup, right? Hold Alt while I'm pressing and holding the left mouse button. I'm going to let go of Alt, and then I'm going to, while still holding, press Shift. And then that is going to, and I'm going to hover over all the polygroups I want to return back to this color. And that's going to give me that, which is really helpful because then I want to Q mesh this out, and I just want this frame here. So I'm just going to click that one time. And that's going to, actually, let's go back. Let's do a little bit so we have a nice edge. We're going to come back out, and then we're going to do that one more time. One more time like that. Yeah, gives me a little bit of edge control. Yep, it is correct. Like Daisuke said, honestly, it depends. Time depends on the type of asset. How much can they spend on time? Likely, you won't spend a lot of time on a random villager, for example. Absolutely, yep. Again, it's always going to depend on assets, and the studio set that up. So whatever it is you're actually working on, again, the studio is going to give you guidance. If you're new to working as a 3D modeler, when you're given a job, depending on the job they're handing you, like let's say they want, like, hey, build this tank. Usually they'll give you a concept or an idea how that tank should look, and they're going to say, hey, can you give me this tank by the end of the day? Model this tank, or model this tank in the next couple hours and show me, and then work on the next thing. They're always going to tell you. Nobody's just going to expect you to assume you know the deadlines or the times. So when you're modeling something like this, usually you're given a deadline. So I wouldn't worry too much about that stuff. Just, you know, your portfolio is to showcase what you can do, and from there, again, that's always going to let the studio know when they hire you, they should have a great understanding of your capabilities. So hopefully that helps you or gives you a little bit of comfort. Just now kind of selecting and bringing these down a little bit. Just giving me a little bit more of a rounded edge. Again, masking and giving that stuff is really helpful. If I do want this to be sharp and then have it kind of come down sharp again, what I could do is either crease this edge, but I'm a big fan of, again, coming over here, inserting an edge loop, and then just creating a couple edge loops that are near the edge. And if I want this to be exactly the same on the other side, no worries. We're going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror, and Weld. But in ZBrush, we have X, we have Y, and we have Z. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the Z, and we're going to hit Mirror and Weld. And that's going to mirror and weld not only on the X-axis, but on the Z. And that's located, this little XYZ right here. Let me turn that back off. So now we don't have to guess. Well, that's close enough. Perfect. Okay. Wait, there we go. Okay, perfect. All right, let's continue making some shapes. Does anybody have any questions so far about like how I got here, how we did the block out? We've done it for just about an hour now, which gave us a pretty good idea of what we're doing. So we can move on to gears and then finalizing shapes. Last commission I had for a silver company took me over a month. Yeah, it could take time. It was very informative, thanks. Not a problem, not a problem. Okay, let's move forward with making stuff and things and stuff. I need a small copy, though. So I made a model, and now I want to upload onto ArtStation, but I don't know what I should add in description. You know what? I'm going to help you out real quick. I'm going to go to my art station. And I'm going to copy and paste that, not because I want you to see my art station or anything like that, but if you would like to see this right here is actually something that I had done for animation for Coach. This was about 1.5 years ago, and you can see this little cute dinosaur animated, which is so much fun. I wish I knew the right, but what you could do is kind of take a look at my portfolio, and you can see what I've done, how I described it, how I displayed it, etc., etc. It even got a 3D print. This was partially what I was allowed to showcase in my portfolio when I asked them. Again, if you work for a company and you want to put in your portfolio, depending on what contracts you're on, is always going to depend on, again, what you can and can't show. But again, I was able, they were like, you can show a marmoset design. And I was like, okay, great. The reason why they said that is because that tells people, you know, oh, here's the topology. There you go. You can see the topology of it. You can see the reflectivity of it. You can see the albedo, which is color. You can see the normals. So they were like, that's, you could just show that. And I was like, great. And then you can see the render. Outside of that, they were like, you can show ZBrush stuff, but only specifics. But nonetheless, this was for animation. So this will give you an idea of like the bare bones, what you probably should show. So hopefully that's helpful. I love this song. I don't know if you guys can hear this song. I don't know if you guys can ever hear the music. I feel like it's hit and miss, but the song's pretty happy. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. So, moving forward, let's get some gears done. You guys want gears? Let's gears. So, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we've literally taken the same shape over and over and over again. And this is why I was saying that, like, ZModeler, the beginning stages, like, it's super fun because we can just get something really cool and easy fast. So we're going to take this cockpit base. I'm going to just Control-Shift-D, duplicate that. We're going to move this over here in the ether of space and time, and we're going to rename this Tread Gears. Now, I'm going to show you another way you can make gears. It's not how I made gears this way. I made gears this way by using ZModeler and just creating some basic stuff. But before we do that, because you guys have seen that action a lot, there is another way you can make gears quickly besides going to the Steampunk IMM brush, which is no, not V, and B-I. And then where are we? It is... Come on. I see it every day and now I can't find Steam Gear. There it is. E. And this is really cool because you can just really fast, quick, and in a hurry say like, okay, I want to make a gear. I don't want to waste time. I have basic shapes. So you know what? I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to drag this out. Right? And then we'll put that here. And then let's actually do ourselves a solid. And you know what? Let's grab this gear right here. And again, we're going to drag this out. Hold Shift to make sure that's kind of centered in. I'm going to put this here. We made a gear. There you go. Gear's done. This is one way you can do it. But I want to show you something really, really cool. And we're going to use this gear, because why not? This is kind of a cool gear. It's just to kind of showcase that things work. So we'll put this over here. We'll kind of center that to what we have. Let's actually turn this back on. I'm going to Control-Shift-D. So these will be our, like, our outer gears, right? Is what's making the world spin. But if we want to make like a base shape of gears and we don't want to rely on the brush, what we can do, and let's actually put this up here in this corner right there, is we can actually go back to the initialize process by selecting a simple shape and then modifying it. And before we do that, we're just going to go ahead and save that. So we're going to go back to the simple brush, and it's going to ask us, hey, do you want to switch? And if you say yes, it's going to actually take your model, and it's going to create a little spotlight stamp on your viewport. So that's why my tank up over here. So when I say switch, now I don't have anything really selected, right? But I'm going to go ahead back to the simple brush, and I'm going to take this gear 3D guy. And I'm going to drag this out, and then I'm going to hit T for edit. Boom. Okay. Now, again, if we hit Shift F, you can see here that, like we did in the very beginning, if you were with us, we have a white poly frame. This is letting us know that we can't sculpt on this yet, but we can modify it. So if we go back to initialize, very much how we did with the cylinder in the very beginning, we have controls. And what's really neat is we have a bunch of sliders that I don't want you to be scared of. I just want you to grab something like coverage and be like, oh, that's what coverage does. Width, hey, that's what width does. Inner radius, well, that's really cool. Skew, right? It's doing exactly what we think it will do. So we're going to go ahead and actually create like something like this shape that we can work off of. In fact, let's actually take that. That actually looks pretty cool. And we just moved a few sliders. Hey, Strangey. Yep. Have a great time. Awesome. Awesome having you here. Okay. And we're actually going to take the outer. Whoop. Actually, we'll Control Z that. We'll come back here. We'll actually make that kind of stepped like such. And then let's actually take the radius and bring that in just a little bit. And we can say, yeah, that's going to be our nice face. And now I'm going to go ahead and say make polymesh 3D. And now we can come back to our initial tank. Okay. And then again, we'll go to Subtool. We'll go ahead and insert. And now we can see it right here. It's already built in our icon. We can move this aside. I'm going to go ahead and drag that out. So we have a nice new shape that's something different and unique, right? And then we could take that one step further. Because again, we don't have to model everything from scratch all the time. We have nice bases, so you could take a lot of these different shapes. This gear 6 again. Oh, back that up there. Just drag this shape out. Let's go ahead and move that to the center. Scale this up. And we can create our own gears like such. Say, yep. Just like that. And now we can take this whole thing, bring it on down. And what I'd recommend is we kind of rotate this around so that it makes sense. Holding Control, gonna drag that out. Maybe rotate that around, holding Shift to give us a nice indicator. Grab this one. Let's go ahead and select this guy. We can even rotate this one around so that everything makes sense. So when we look at it from afar, we can be like, all right, we have 2 inner gears and 2 outer gears. And if we would like to move this in space a little bit, we can go ahead and turn on this pizza box thing and isolate just the things we would like to manipulate and drag that out. Oh, this one is masked, so let's make sure we don't have any masks. But again, we want our mesh to be colliding. But yeah, that's going to look functional. And then from there, let's actually just go ahead and let's grab maybe a couple rivets so that it looks like it's holding where it should. So drag a rivet out. Grab this here. So again, we don't always have to build from scratch. We can just... Surprisingly, that looks kind of cool, but I'm going to use a different one. I'm actually going to grab this guy right here, put this in the center. Yeah, let's actually build that right there. That looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and drag this out. There we go. So we can make our own fun little gears, and then let's go ahead and just actually merge that down. There you go. And then let's go ahead and mirror and weld that. And make sure you mirror weld without symmetry. So now we have gears. So I modeled the ones in the video by hand using the same tricks you've already seen, but I wanted to showcase another way in which you can make gears as well. So only Z primitives will have the initiate slider. Yeah, most of the Z primitives will have the initiate slider, yes. But there's a lot of options within those tools, right? You have even spheres, cubes, polymesh, helixes, you have the gear, 3D, arrows. These are all primitive shapes. You can get almost anything out just from these shapes alone. Ryan Smith, the SP001 for Metal Slug. I will admit openly that Metal Slug and Worms Armageddon were heavily inspiration for me. I can't speak today. Huge inspiration. I took a look at those things. I was like, that's going to be fun. I got to make one of those. So not going to lie, Worms Armageddon was like probably the pinnacle of all that. But yeah. Okay. Let's actually go ahead and clear this out real quick because I want to be able to just only show the stuff that I had built. Let's go ahead and S-shift. And then we got this guy. All right, let's continue forward because we're going to do also, again, from here, it's all downhill at this point. Now we're going to just like refine and refine and refine. So let's go ahead and save. Now, when we were talking about creasing earlier, something I want to showcase real fast is the ability to crease everything that you need really fast, quick, and in a hurry. And we're going to do that by just using auto groups and crease poly groups. Crease PG, Crease Paul Gabry. For some reason, that's his name now. So we're going to go to polygroups, and we're going to make sure that when we hit group by normal, we can actually change this function by the angle in which we are actually saying crease by normal. So it defaults to 45 degrees. So anything that has a fall off of 45 degrees or greater, it's going to automatically give it a different polygroup. But sometimes you might actually have polygroups like right here that angle is a lot shallower. So it's not actually at 45, it's maybe like 15 degrees. So we can come up right here to groups by normal, and we could change this. And let's say 20. And when then we go group by normals, now if we look, we have all of these different polygroups here on that degree. But that's a little extreme, so I'm going to say 25 is probably a bit better. There you go. And I'm going to mirror and weld that because when you do a groups by normal, it is going to not do it truly symmetrical. If we look at this really closely, might be a little hard to see, but we have an orange, kind of orangish color over here where it's purple over here. So we want to make sure that if we would like it to be truly symmetrical, just do your mirror and weld on the x-axis. And then from there, we do our crease. So geometry, crease, and crease polygroups. And then that right there, when we hit D, now that displays a more smoother, easier gear, but it's still keeping all the sharp edges that we want. So we're not losing our shapes or designs. So that's another cool way to do that. And a trick with hard surface that I would say is that if it looks like it makes sense, that's going to be helpful. When doing hard surface modeling like spaceships or tanks, you want it to feel like it should work, even though we're not building the internals, because we're not actually building a tank to be produced and actually function in the real world. We're producing something that looks and feels like it should. So every decision I'm making is, does this look and make sense? Let's see. Hey, what's going on, Diego? How do I make my stroke look really smooth? It looks like it's low poly, even though there's a huge amount of polygons. Okay. Great question. Without seeing a visual, but you want it to look really, really smooth. So I'm assuming if you tried lazy mouse, that would be the first thing I'm going to go to. So I'm actually going to go real quickly, grab this. I'm going to grab the cylinder, make polymesh 3D. I'm going to subdivide this up a little bit, right? So if I were to grab just our /3 brush, for example, if I were to just kind of draw that out, you're getting this kind of jagginess. I'm assuming that's what we're referring to. It doesn't look really clean. You have a lot of polygons to capture the information, but it still looks weird. Go up to stroke. Lazy mouse should be turned on. If it's not, turn it on and adjust the lazy radius. And what that will do is that'll give you a little bit of a tail. And the longer the tail, the more control you have over that stroke. And also a really cool feature is if you want a straight line and you have lazy mouse turned on, when you click and press your pen or mouse down one time and then hold shift, you'll actually get a tail with a degree call out. So 8 degrees, 12 degrees, whatever, 0, it's really flat. Let go of shift, Now you get a truly straight line based on that proportion. So that is more than likely, I believe that's the case. Let me know if that is. I made a model in ZBrush, use a knife brush. There's some tiny polygons left. How do I clean those up? There's some tiny polygons left, so use the knife brush. What I would recommend you do is when you make your cut like this, what you can do is if there's little bits left over floating in the ether, then all you need to really do is go to polygroups, auto groups, Control Shift select, and then try to invert it by holding Control Shift and try to invert it. If it inverts and it doesn't look like there's anything there, that's isolated the little points that are giving you trouble. Then just invert back to here and delete hidden, which is under geometry, modify topology, and delete hidden, and then it'll delete those particles for you. That's the fastest way to do it. Yep, exactly, G. Okay. That typically can happen when you're using Dynamesh a lot as well, and then use the knife brush, the little bits, or you use those little bits, Dynamesh, and then you use knife curve, then Dynamesh again. Sometimes that can happen, so that's the easiest way. All right, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Let's get the top of the lid. Let's get this little back base here. And then, yeah, we're well on our way. So at this point so far, we've only gone about an hour and a half. I plan on finishing this tank up, so we're going to speed up a little bit. But it's the same process. If you are watching this after the stream and you've made it this far and everybody's hanging out right now, it's going to be downhill from here. We're just doing a lot of the same. We're just making some artistic choices. For example, here, I want to be able to kind of give me a little bit more rounded effect. So I'm going to take the ZModeler brush, so that's BZM, or just come on up here, hit Z one time, and then look for the ZModeler brush. And now we're going to go ahead and hit Insert, and I'm just going to add some edges where I think they should be. And what I'm looking for is the ability to round off this edge a bit. So I'm actually going to now delete these edges by holding Alt and clicking on that edge and deleting these areas. Okay? Because again, this is kind of like on the inside, but then I want to actually round that out. So an earlier trick we did was we went over the edge, we went to multiple edge loops, interactive elevation, and we started dragging out some of these edges, and then we started moving this stuff. Now, of course, too, we're actually getting a little something different. So let's, another method we could do that with, actually, is just inserting an edge where we want it to be. Not inset, insert. Something like that. And let's actually just make this action here like such. I'm actually just going to expand that on that edge like that. It's going to be a little bit different, but I think that'll be pretty cool. Multiple edge loops. Let's get a couple here like this, and then that should be fine. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's looking all right. I like that. And what we're gonna do now is actually Shift D turns off the dynamic subdivision look. I'm gonna go ahead and select these areas, and now this is what's cool about QMesh. Again, remember I said earlier how it kind of will find a close edge or face and snap to it. So if you were to take extrude, this wouldn't quite extrude the way you want because it's leaving the wall there. This is where QMesh is super powerful, because then I can just push in that section right there. And now that actually snapped to an edge that already existed. And we can even get some fun shapes there, so you can get some really cool fall off. Something like that, right? And then we can add in some new insert, some new edges to support. That's a lot for no reason. So let's move it over here. And again, we're going to go ahead and just mirror and weld on the X and Z, just so we don't have to click every spot. And then from here, I want this to be pretty sharp. So we're going to go ahead and go to Geometry, Crease, and Crease Polygroups. And then that's going to give me a nice kind of cut right in there and round out everything else off. The rest of the geometry here on the side is indifferent to me because it's colliding in with the tread, so it doesn't matter so much. However, I do want this to look like it's connected and not just smashing into it. So we're going to do a little bit of fun adjustments by coming here on this side. And what we're going to do is we're now going to go to polygroups. I keep opening up the shortcut. That's like my default in the way I work. If you guys ever want to do a live stream where we build an actual UI together, let me know, because we can do that live during one of the streams. And we're going to go ahead and do group by normals. Again, mirror and weld, so we're working on the same side because we are working symmetrically. And then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go to inset. Now, here's something I wanted to showcase too, which is custom. I'm going to butcher this. Custom oh gosh, stop, Jesus. Okay, well, anyway, this spot right down here. That was a butcher. I'm really sorry. I can't speak today. But what this does is it actually allows us to inset a little bit more efficiently so that the edges itself don't just collapse on themselves. We're allowed to get a little bit more of an equal stop. Jeez. Okay. Don't judge me too hard. Okay, now we're going to go here to Q mesh and we're going to push this in just a little bit. So now it looks like it connects a little bit. And now let's just use some edge loops to support this. Print them separately. Yes, absolutely. Let's see here. Maybe I missed it. How can I move? How can the wheels? How the wheels can move if they print on the tank? Yeah, if you want them to print, you design them. If you want them to move, you're gonna print. You're gonna design them with moving in mind. I feel like my words are just like falling off today, and I'm so sorry. The answer is more coffee. So yeah, if you want the wheels to move independently, then when you're making your design for that. I am no engineer. A lot of the stuff that I do was simplistic articulation. So if you want those to move, you would just design for that. But yeah, for the most part here, because I'm just going to be 3D printing this is going to look like it is what it is. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we're just going to, you see how we set up these polygroups here on this frame? So now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to utilize now what we set up to benefit our success here. That's how I got that shape. I just lined up those two and used the same shapes to get that. Now let's get the top of this going. I like how this tank is just slightly different. Let's also, real fast, come back here for a second because we do want this this kind of like chain that's wrapped around the tread. And so we're going to show the easiest and most effective way to do this. This is actually really cool. So we're going to come here, and we're going to hover over one of our faces, and we're going to go to polygroup. But down here at the bottom, we're going to say polygroup all, and then we're going to say checkered. And what this is going to do is when I click this, it's going to take the polygroup, all of it, and then it's going to skip every other one. It's going to checker that pattern out. And that's how I got the tread, because from here, now I just went ahead with Q mesh, started dragging this out, but I actually wanted these separate. I didn't want them on the same. I wanted full control of them. So by holding control, I can now rip that piece off. And that becomes a separate mesh. So again, holding control, dragging, hold control, and then pressing Alt will give me a different polygroup. And then I can click this out and I can separate that. That's a little too far, so I'm actually just going to do this just a little bit. No need to reinvent the wheel there. Or, you know, actually, let's make them a little smaller. So let's come here, let's go to Inset, Polygroup All. And then from there, we're going to drag this out with Q mesh. Just like that. And now we have these guys right here, so they're slightly smaller. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to split hidden. So I'm going to hide the other side, and I'm going to go to Subtool. We're going to come on down to Splits and Split Hidden. And now we can see that they exist right here. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to make this thick. So we're going to go back to QMesh and we're just going to drag this in. Now I'm dragging it in because I already have them set where I want, but you can see here the normals are reversed a bit. And that's okay, that's going to happen. So what we can do is actually scroll on down to display properties and turn on double, and I mean not double, flip, and that's going to actually flip the normals. If we turn on double, it's going to show correctly, but the normals are not correct. So we're going to hit flip, and now that's actually flipped normals, and it's facing in the correct direction. But now they're also colliding the way that they should be, which is fun. That's what I want to see. And now we're going to come back here. It's not done yet. We're going to pull all of our shapes from this one tread, and we can actually control Z if we don't want this anymore. Like, I don't need that anymore. That was literally for the tread, but now I do want to get those bands. So insert multiple edge loops. I'm sure you guys can guess where I'm going with this, and we're actually going to go with alternate polygroup. And then from here, same thing. Actually, I'm going to hide this one here, make this a different polygroup altogether. Same thing, I'm going to drag this out, but we're not going to separate this one. We're just going to drag this one out. No need to separate that. But what we can do is we can go insert, and we can give it some supporting edge loops. Just like such. So that we have nice sharp edges. There we go, just like that. We're doing it on both sides. Yay, we're doing it! There we go. And then just making sure that we have crease polygroups. Hit D, and now we have some tread popping in. But if you would like that to be slightly separate, you totally can do that. And then here, actually, what we can do, we can hold Shift and with QMesh and actually push that in a little bit more. So if it's too far out, that's another way we can do it. Shift and snap that back in a little bit. Any edge loops that are colliding, we'll just go ahead and push that in. There we go, something like that. And that's going to give us what we're looking for. Hey, not a problem. Thanks for being here. Thank you, thank you. So, real quick, we have to wake up. If you hold a perpetual license right now, that perpetual license will still work. So if you're holding a perpetual license that you bought from before Maxon, then that perpetual license will still work. So you'll be able to hold on to it. Okay. Let's continue forward. Now we're going to just kind of get the cap going, and then we'll get the handle, and then after that, it's just detailing, and then we can go over some render stuff. All right, so what we're going to do here, let's grab this guy. In fact, actually, with the lid, let's just take this shape, because we already have this shape. We're going to Control-Shift-D. And duplicate it. I'm going to scale this down and give us the lid that we need to succeed. And then I'm going to do very similar methods. I have this kind of nice rounding edge right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of mask this section off here. Whee! And drag it up a little bit. Right about where I want that fall off to be. I'm going to add another edge loop right about there where I'm going to want that to be. I want this to round off but have a flat spot on the top. So we'll add a edge loop somewhere in the middle, and then we're going to Alt-Delete that right there. And then like you saw us do earlier, again, we're going to go with the edge loop, insert multiple edge with interactive elevation, drag that out, and make that a little bit round. And we'll just hit Control-W to make it all the same poly group. And then we'll take some insert. What did I do here? I don't want insert on that one. That's the face. Okay, we're gonna insert single edge. Drag that here, drag that here, drag that there, and drag that there. These are just giving me, so it has a little bit of fall off control. That's our lid. Yay for lids. Let's actually make it a bit taller. And we're going to select here and put that in, and we're going to collide that. So now it looks like our lid is on top. Is there a bridge for Blender to move easily back and forth with ZBrush? Yes, there is actually. It's called Go B. It is a bridge that the Blender community made. So if you're looking to go back and forth between the two, Go B is your answer. And that's just a quick Google search and you'll be able to find that. Create a sharper fall off right there. And now I'm going to actually this is what I did as well. I'm just gonna grab a IMM primitive, so that's B, I, and then T for IMM primitive. And there's no need to overcomplicate this. I'm just gonna go ahead and actually drag this out. And actually want this to have edges. I'm just gonna drag this out and then collide that in. Okay. And then I'm gonna actually, what I did for the handle, you guys are gonna laugh. It's just again going back to our fun little gear parts thingies. We have a nice little looking handle. Nope, that's machine parts. Boop, 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 boop. Where's my gear stuff? There it is. And then I had this guy right here, gear 15. I drug this out. And then what I did was I actually held control and inflated it. That looked pretty good. And then I just blew it up and then collided it. And then from here, we can go ahead and auto groups. So I keep pulling that shortcut up. I try not to pull up the shortcuts when I'm streaming because that's not helpful. If I'm like, oh, just hit 2 on the keyboard and that will totally fix everything and all your problems. It does not. So I don't want it to be like, oh, what did he hit? So we're just adding some shapes and making it look like it belongs the way it belongs. There we go. And we have a handle. Yep, that is correct. And now we can take machine parts. So again, this is what's really, really cool. When you're doing hard surface ZBrush, especially if you're starting out, you know, if you're very advanced with 3D modeling and ZModeler is already something you're used to, then you know you're already used to building assets and creating shapes yourself. And I highly encourage anybody to create those shapes. But yes, these brushes, these gear brushes, are 100% shipped with ZBrush. So if you already have ZBrush, it's already in ZBrush. They come with shipped. So yes, to answer your question, it is free. It's already within ZBrush. So you can go ahead and just utilize them. The cult of control and alt and shift is the only keys you need. Absolutely. So yes, and again, if you're building stuff from scratch, then you have a ton of these stuff. All of these that are within ZBrush here, I would never use anything on one of these how it's made without giving it to you. I wouldn't come up with a brush that makes no sense. So all these are here for you. But I highly encourage, especially if you're new to the hard surface, don't feel like you have to make every little piece yourself. We have a bunch of parts already here for you, and it's just going to make your life so much easier. So utilize these to your advantage. But then when you are using them, see how they're built, and then when you need to build it yourself, you can already kind of just reverse engineer that process. So here, for example, I'd actually like to take the machining parts, or do I want to take, I think it's machining parts, or is it model kit? It might be model kit. Let me look at the model kit real quick. Because we have a bunch of nuts and bolts that are already done, which is neat, which we're going to be utilizing. We have a ton. Also, too, if you're going through the stuff, you're like, oh, what brush does it have on there? If you have an IMM brush open and you hit M on the keyboard, it's going to show you everything within. So you're like, oh, what is in the clothing brush? Once it populates, hit M, it shows you all the primitives to work with. So here with the model kit brush, it's 120 different primitives, but you get a sense of like everything that's within it. So you could say, oh, you know, I actually need this latch, and you can just go ahead and click right from that area. Oh, I need this handle. Yep, it's right there. So find the latch that works for you, like, oh, this latch works. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and drag this out. And then I'm gonna rotate this around, holding shift. Holding shift is our best friend. I'm gonna put this here, control drag that out, invert, make that a new polygroup by control W. And I'm gonna just go ahead and set this here. And then actually this latch 2 looks really useful. So I'm gonna drag this out, and with that selected, I hit latch 2, it's actually just gonna go ahead and change it. So you can actually use the arrow key as well and actually find something that works. And you're like, yeah, latch 2 is gonna be my best friend. I'm gonna rotate that, expand it up. And then I'm gonna manipulate this. I'm actually going to add to this. It's not long enough for what I want, so I'm gonna bring the ZModeler brush out. I'm gonna add in some edge loops. So I'm gonna add in multiple edge loops, something like this. I'm gonna grab my mass lasso, and again, I'm just gonna say, yeah, let's lengthen this guy right here just a little bit. So take the arrow key, grab that. Go. Select this guy right here, invert that, bring this out. Cool. Select this. Let's bring this in, and now I can line that up how I think it's gonna need to fit. Make a little bit more sense. Something like that. We just manipulate it however we need to. Let's actually grab this guy right here. Now it looks like that latch is holding that door a little bit. It at least makes sense. So again, not reinventing the wheel. There's no need to do that. And because it's going to be 3D printed, we can actually make that kind of big. Hello, hello! What's going on? My name is right there. Bat King has some free... yep, absolutely. Bat King brushes are really, really good. Shout out to them. Exactly. IMM isn't cheating if people can't notice. And even still, like, art's supposed to be fun, right? And a lot of studios still use base meshes. They create base meshes all the time to create assets that you can use. Like, you know, don't be afraid to utilize some of the stuff within the program. That's why it's there. Just, you know, make it fit the model that you need. You know, don't just... If you're just taking it, slapping it on, and not making it seem like it works, that's when it looks obvious and it looks interesting. But already with everything that I've showcased today, any one of you can go and just start modeling with ZModeler and using the assets and building what you need. So it helps a lot to get what you're looking for. And I'm actually going to go ahead and we're going to go to polygroups, and we're going to go to group by normals, and then I'm going to go to geometry, crease polygroups. Get that kind of smooth cannon look. There we go. Now let's get this back panel. And the back panel, we're going to do the exact same way that we did the front panel. So we're going to turn on symmetry. We're going to do a temp block out. Going to Q mesh this, but in this case, actually, try to think, do I want to separate? No, let's not separate it. Let's not keep separated this time. What we will do, actually, is we're going to just drag this out. Like Alt, tapping Alt, I mean, to go ahead and get some different edge loops. Now, if you don't want to delete an edge loop and place a new edge loop, I'll give you a little neat trick, which is you can actually slide a complete edge loop. Instead of deleting it, you can just hover over that edge, choose slide complete edge loop. Then you can grab that and then you can slide it. So if you place an edge loop and you change your mind in the world, that's how you can do that. I change my mind all the time. Just FYI. All right, and let's go ahead and do inset, polygroup, and let's go ahead and click this. And we're gonna inset this panel, and then we're gonna go ahead and inset this one, and you guys can already see where we're going with this. Q mesh right here. And we'll push this back in. Look at that. There you go. So now we have this back panel right there. And then now we're just going to go ahead and crease. And what we can also do too is we can crease individual edges. So you can see here it's kind of falling apart right there. It's rounding, but I don't want to add all these different edge loops. So we can go to an edge, go to crease, and then do a edge loop partial. And that's going to go ahead and crease the edge loop just a little bit. It's not going to do the full loop. It'll do a temporary crease alongside, and it will just all the way to where it stops. And then when we hit that, now it's nice and sharp. So that's how we can do that. You can actually crease that one if we would like. If we want to do it that way. I don't want to do that though. Can you use the XMD brushes without using the toolbox? There is an XMD. Where are we? It ships with ZBrush now. There was a plugin for XMD if I remember right. I don't use XMD brushes, but you should be able to. I think you have to use, if you have the XMD plugin in your defaults. Why am I not seeing it here? I thought it shipped. If you have the XMD plugin, or it's just going to open up the toolbox. I think you have to use the toolbox. The stream die? Oh, no. Oh, did the stream die? Well, I'm glad you're back. Oh, it's under file. File. Ah, there it is. Open XMD toolbox. Thank you. No, it's working fine. Yeah. Oh, your stream died. Okay, gotcha. Nope. Okay. So yeah, but you have to go through the XMD. That will just open it up. I don't have XMD installed on this computer, so I don't use them. But if you have them, yeah, go ahead and use it. That's the browser. Okay. I was panicking. Okay. I actually want to. I don't want to crease those edges. I've changed my mind, and I actually want to do something a little different. So I'm actually going to. Add a little bit of edge support there, a little bit of fall off. Don't do that either. Okay, let's come back to that. But let's actually get something kind of cool here. I'm gonna get some panels happening. So we're actually gonna get just a couple panels on the back, and I was just inset coming in like this. Like that one time. And then I just extruded this out. Q-meshed it. Like that. And then come here with insert, added some edges. And then I just deleted these edges here. And then I went through and cleaned them up towards the... Went through and just cleaned them up by adding some extra edges and stuff like that. But again, playing with the shapes, playing with the refinement, or you just go ahead and do crease by polygroups, which will give you something a little bit more. And if you want to keep that separate, just go ahead and make it separate, which is what I did here on this one here. In fact, if we go to the original model, click this, you can actually see I kept this a separate piece. So it's a nice way to go ahead and just control stuff. Because a lot of times too, what will happen is if you're extruding from a lot of different shapes, you can actually find out that sometimes you'll get edges that, you know, just like in normal traditional box modeling, edges you extrude, if they're not supported correctly, they kind of break. So I default to making sure that each piece is separated in some regards, but it is up to you in your approach, just giving you some ways to go ahead and do it. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. I don't mind going back in time and redoing that piece because, again, it's just fun. I like it. And I like to repeat myself a lot. So let's actually go do that. We're going to go this way. We're going to go to splits, hidden, and then we're going to build this piece out. So we're going to actually Q mesh that in so that it goes through. properties and flip normals, and now we're going to build it off of here. So, no wrong way to model, unless they tell you. Good. So, yeah, panic mode for streamers, right? Okay, let's go ahead and do this one more time like this, and then let's Q mesh this, push this in. So again, we can control just this. We can control this one a lot easier. And so what we can do is come through here, and let's go ahead and crease our polygroups. Again, creasing our polygroups, just go up to geometry, crease polygroups, and that will crease all of the different polygroups. And then you get something like this. And if you want that nice sharp edge, again, what we can do is go to polygroups, group by normals, and then we go up to geometry, crease, and crease polygroups. And now it's going to be nice and sharp. Just the way we intended it to be, forever and ever and ever and ever. And then now let's actually make those nice little planes. Come through here. Come here, click this. And then we're going to grab these guys right here with Q mesh. Holding control separates that piece out. So we'll do that just a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead. And two, we actually don't even have to separate it. We can just extrude that out from that shape if we would like. It's up to you. I separate them if I want them to collide well with each other. So that's the reason why I do that. Because then we just push that back in. And then we go back to display properties and flip normals. And then we can delete these edges here. Like such. So we get that kind of little bit of a fall off happening. Oops. Let's come here. Boop. There we go. And then we can actually extrude that further in. So let's come here. This is why I have the shortcut. Polygroups, auto groups. Polygroup, group by normals. Drag that out. Click one time, repeat. Click one time, repeat action. And we get something like that. And then let's go ahead and crease by polygroups. Geometry, crease, polygroup. There we go. We get something like this. And we get something like this. Super fancy. Okay. Let's see. It's going on 2, so we are going over a little bit, but that's okay because, again, nobody's streaming after me, so it is my world. We do it. I want to get to the renders and stuff like that. So let me showcase how I did the bolts, which the bolts are really cool. There is a plugin that I actually do want you guys to get, and that will be under... Boop. I'm going to go now. Let's go right here. I'm going to actually link you to it so you don't have to worry, but this plugin is really, really helpful. So we're going to go ahead and go to resources. 1 second. Resources. I'm going to send you the link. Do not have to worry. We're going to go to ZBrush plugins. And if you already do not have it, you're going to be scrolling on down. And we're going to be going to IMM extractor, where are we? Blah, 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 blah. IMM draw size. That's the one you're looking for. And you'll see why in a second. ZModeler's having more and better box modeling tools each person, so no one will be sculpting anymore. No need. All right. So again, we're going to be going to IMM draw size, and the reason why is because we're going to want a controllable draw size for each one of the IMM parts that we're drawing out to make these nuts and bolts. So if we would like to actually, go ahead and have different parts or interpolate different parts, we're going to use IMM with IMM draw size to create a size that we would like. So I'm going to isolate this for a second. We're going to go ahead and give us some extra edge loops. I want to keep my poly groups. Let's do that. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. That music, though, exactly, right? That's actually too much. All right. So when you're using an IMM brush. And for this, we're going to use the model kit, hit M, and we're going to select a typical bolt. There we go. Or otherwise known as a fastener. No, that's not the one I meant. I'm hitting all sorts of things today. Alright, so I'm actually going to want a fastener, so fastener 17. Wonderful. So when I draw this out, you know, when you go to draw stuff out, basically you're going to have that shape, and then if you touch it again, it's not going to repeat that action. IMM brushes don't typically work that way. However, what we can do is we can go up to our Z plugin with IMM Draw, and we can actually set a draw size. So if we were to say, I want my bolt to be this big, right? So default is 5, so what we need to do is just adjust the slider. So here I'm going to say, let's try 1 and say set size. That's going to give us that brush size. So maybe we go a little bit smaller than that. Let's go like 0.25 because our model is a little small. Go here. Now I have this. Now I want to go ahead and drag, and then if I hold Control, that's actually going to snap and give me the same size every time. So I drag this out, hit Control, and that's going to draw that out each time. Now what's cool is we can do this with Interpolate as well. So I can say, let's grab our ZModeler brush here, boop. And I'm going to want to, yeah, let's do this one, and let's do this one. Just deleting some edges I don't think I'm going to need right now. So I would like to add the stuff here. Now Interpolate, if we go up to Stroke and Interpolate, what it's going to do is going to take the first stroke and the last stroke, and it's going to fill in the middle. Basically, it's going to repeat that action in the middle however many times we call out. We have stroke count of 10 by default, so if we just basically demonstrate that, I drag this out, I hit that model one more time, grab here, hit Control, come here, hit Control, and then I go up to Stroke and then hit Interpolate. It's going to repeat that action 10 times. Now, that's a lot, right? But this is how we can get stuff out quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this out one time here, and then I'm going to go ahead and drag it out. Actually, let's back this up so we can see everything. And drag this here, hold Control. I'm going to drag this here and hold Control. And now I'm going to go up to Stroke, Interpolate, and I actually only want 8. Change that, hit Interpolate, and it repeats that action for me. And now, what I can do, clear this out, is I can just go ahead and rely on Control Drag. Man, oh, that's actually doing that thing. Let's actually isolate this here. Let's actually, if this happens to you, okay, just go ahead and unmask everything. Let's go mirror and weld. Let's try this one more time. Invert that. There we go. Just mirror and weld it, and then Control Drag, and now we have this shape here. And we can go ahead and center that. Now we have some bolts. And we're getting those shapes that we want. Real quick, fast, and in a hurry. And we can do this in multiple actions. So let's come here. Let's just repeat ourselves. So that plugin, really, really helpful. So let's actually come back here with our ZModeler brush. Let's give us a center edge loop. 1, 2. And then let's do the same thing. Let's go back to our plugin. Let's actually get a 0.15. Set that brush size. Go back to our IMM. Let's go back to our model kit. Now let's pick a different bolt. Let's pick some weird rivets. Hold Control, Control, Control. Just utilizing the edge loops here. And it looks a little silly, like that one. That looks fine. I'm gonna grab this guy. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and mask these 4. I'm just gonna go ahead and bring this down, line that up ourselves. Nah, that looks silly. Oops. Watching me fumble, watching me slip, watching me go all... Okay, anyway. Let's actually grab this. Let's mask this off. Just set this in the center, and I'm going to hold control and actually kind of shrink that down a little bit. So, you know what? A little bit of different choices and stuff like that. And if you don't like it, you're going to delete it and throw it out. Yeah, it does. Yep. Okay. So, that's pretty much going to cover the build process. We went over just a little bit, but that's okay. Now, the fun part, this whole thing has been fun, but the next part will be the Toon shading aspect. So let's actually do a crease by poly groups. There we go. And then let's actually, I added some bolts down here. Like such, like that. And then let's actually go ahead and go this route. Let's make some, let's do some more bolts. Let's actually do these flatheads. Just dragging out, holding control, dragging out, holding control, dragging out, holding control. Again, really easy to get just different shapes quickly. There you go. And we have all these bolts here. This one, there we go. Let's do that. So slightly different, but that's okay. Now we're gonna do the renders. Let's get some color and then let's do some render. So let's go ahead and do save. Before we move on to that, does anybody have any questions on how we've been building this tank throughout this whole time? I want to make sure that I cover as much of it as possible. But as you can see, it's a lot of rinse and repeat actions. It's a lot of just utilizing. We only really used ZModeler bevel, ZModeler crease, ZModeler insert, and inset. Those are like our big ones for the majority of this build, which is just really all you need to get started with ZModeler. And again, spacebar being best friend has really just been super helpful. So with the coloring aspect, actually let's cover the render aspect. I don't want to go too long, too over. So let's cover the render aspect. Yeah. Let's go ahead and just save as, and let's get into rendering. The rendering part is going to be the Toon shade, and we'll use this model for that. There we go. Now the rendering option is going to be a lot of fun, and it's actually really simple. It's just materials. It's a material adjustment, and then it's going to be a BPR adjustment to get and fine tune the way we like it. And then from there, you can go nuts. The first way to do any type of Toon render is actually by going up here to, we have NPR. So if you hit the comma key to open up the spotlight, we have NPR renders right away. Or we also, if you go to filters, you have a bunch of different presets. And these were all built when we were playing with this a while ago. So you could select one of these and manipulate it. But if you wanted to create your own right from scratch, that's what we're going to cover right now. So in order to do the Toon shade render, first thing first is we're going to just do a couple small little adjustments. The very first thing we're going to do, I like to grab Skin Shade 4 because Skin Shade 4 gives us kind of a nice little blown out look right out the gate. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Material. I'm actually going to pin this on the left-hand side by just clicking this little wheel icon. So that's here, Material, and then this little, you can click it or you can click and drag. And then we're going to go to modifiers. So all of this might seem like super daunting and really scary, but we're really going to focus on the top part and only on a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the specular immediately, take it out. We're going to drop that down, and that's going to just kind of take that blown out look that we're getting here, and we're just going to click that. And then we're going to click on Diffuse Curve. And from here, we're going to take our strength, and we're going to hit 1. And we're already getting the Toon shade that we want. That's that already right there. We can take ambient and drop that down to 0. and we're already getting kind of a Toon look out the gate. But the real magic happens when we go into under render. But that's it for material. So let's actually repeat that. So we're gonna go click that skin shade, take specular down to 0. We're gonna take our diffuse, we're gonna take the strength, and we're gonna put that up at 1. Here's really cool. If you take the steps, you can get kind of a pixelated retro kind of style within the render too. But I keep that steps at 1. Yeah. Now we're gonna go up to render to modify this the rest of the way. But again, ambient is down. You can mess with the diffuse. That will determine how dark or how light something is. Here, let's just set the diffuse. I think I settled this at like, the final render was like 0.85. I think that's where I loved it. Now again, we haven't even hit render yet. This is just a visual representation that gives us kind of that like Toon look. So that's it for materials. So again, I'm going to do that one more time. We're just going to cover it one more time. So pick your material. I like skin shade 4. Take your diffuse, 0.85, strength of 1, no specular, no ambient. Done. Let's move on to render. We're going to do the render tab. We're going to kick that over here. We're going to do just a couple adjustments. First adjustment we're going to do is one important. It's like the most important thing. You want to make sure this feature is turned on. So we're going to go to render properties, and we're going to turn on flat shadow. Flat shadow is going to help us keep all those shadows super flat when we decide to render. Is there any way for it to shoot water instead of rockets in ZBrush, some particle simulations? No, I would say probably the best way is to just kind of sculpt a stream of water. I went with like puffy clouds of burst, but yeah, you can sculpt whatever you want. No particle system within ZBrush to do that. Me hitting Control P and rotating the light like a disco ball. There you go. Yes, the material will still react to lights. Yes, because it's skin shade 4, which is, it's not a matte cap. Matte caps do not are not affected by the lights because the lights are baked into the material. Standard materials are affected, so you can play with lights to get more to refine and get things that you like. Yeah, nano mesh is probably the closest we'll get to particle system. Yeah, as it stands. But with shooting water, you know, just like maybe. You know, what would I use? I would probably use the curved tubes brush, and I'd probably just draw out a stream, and then I'd go in and actually kind of just like start working with adding some motion to it. Yeah. So now what we're gonna do, now that's it. That's all you have to do for the, you could probably do ambient occlusion if you want, but flat shade, or flat shadow, that's what you want to turn on. Now we're gonna go ahead and hit Shift R. And that's going to give us our base render. From here, we're going to start messing with some other things. So I have a few things that I have preset. And by the way, again, going back to the very beginning of the stream, and for those of you who are joining, and if you made it this far in the VOD, I'm going to go ahead and with the newsletter, we're going to be dropping materials that were in the original render. I have all of the BPR settings and the material settings that will set up as a free drop in the newsletter. So look out for that. It's free, promise. And that'll be in a newsletter drop coming. Not this one, but the one after, I think. Okay. We're going to go to BPR filters, and now we're going to use the filter system to refine this look a little bit more. We hit Shift R to give us something kind of nice and flat. And now what we're going to do is on F1. Now remember too, when you're working with BPR filters, each filter, when you're stacking them through, they are working with each other. So depending on the order in which you want to do this, will greatly depend on the look of it. So if you stack F1, that filter, F2 is going to stack on top of F1, and F3 is going to stack on top of F2, and so forth and so forth. So as you stack these, just be kind of aware of that order system so that you can play and get different effects. So with the first filter, we're going to turn that on, and it's defaulted to noise. And again, to turn that on is a little bubble. Turn that off, little bubble, so turn it on. And I'm actually going to set this up to an outline cavity. Now, as we are working with it already rendered, BPR filters update automatically when you're rendered. If you're not rendered, it's not going to update automatically. Hit Shift R or this little BPR, and this will update so you can actually adjust on the fly and get what you're looking for. And here we're going to go to modifiers, and we're just going to adjust the radius of it. Maybe try inner cavity. There you go. And adjust. That's noise. I don't want any of the noise, but we can adjust the radius and how that falls off, giving us those nice sharp edges on the side. Nice. Okay. And then we can also, so that's outline cavity. We turn on the second one. We can actually do an outline edge, just to make that a little bit bolder, giving us that kind of cartoon sketchy look. I didn't really adjust anything there. And then from here, if you would like a little bit of texture, I would like to turn on the third one. And then I like to go ahead and do just like an overpaint texture of sorts. And what this will do is, if we zoom in, it's just applying that texture over it. But we can actually adjust the mask and how that affects. So we can either push that noise back, or we can lean it forward, and all that texture is now within the model itself and not on the outside. And then we can adjust these modifiers. Adjust the size, the amount of texture that you want, the opacity, all that stuff, giving you more control of that kind of cartoony look. Then the last one that I did, which probably is one of my favorite, is I came on in and I did, where are we? Auto contrast. You're up here somewhere. Right, auto contrast? Yeah, auto contrast. Where are we? Contrast auto color. There we go. Boom. Giving us a final result. Let's actually hit F and frame this right. Let's hit Shift R. And this gives us that kind of boost of saturation, boost of color, and now we have a very simplistic but very fun and effective cartoon shape. And as we're going through, and we're zooming out, and again we hit it, and you can change the background, you can change the lighting, but typically all this stuff is just based on the flatness of that color. So, boom. I don't know, Ryan, you're gonna have to find out, buddy. So there you guys go. So that is the render aspect as well. So again, we covered how I went through and modeled this tank, and we got something that was really fun and very close. And hopefully this gives you a good idea of what it is and how to build something like this. Again, we went a little bit of a slightly different direction, but all in all, it was fun. We covered how to do gears, how to get the shapes blocked out, how to make things look really well. And then from there, we went ahead and with the one that's already pre-built, again, we're going to be printing this. You know, thanks to Formlabs 2 partnering with us, we'll be able to get a lot of these STLs printed, and then from there we'll be able to push forward and have it released to you guys so you can have this one for 3D printing. So I'll be prepping this for that. And then, of course, we just did our Shade 4 and then our BPR filters. And again, once you set these filters up, you can go ahead and save out these presets. Say, yeah, this is that preset, and then we built this material. There's no need to build a material and then delete it, right? So just go up to your material and say save and call this our cartoon material. If I can type. And then now you have that material for whatever, and you can always bring it onto every of your models. Little moves with the cursor movement. Oh, light moves with the cursor movement. Yeah. Really cool. Thanks for the info. Not a problem. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's How It's Made. If you guys would like more of these, we're going to be doing more series, and we'd like to dive into deeper with this stuff, really bringing out how to create something specific, but still going over tools that you use in every project. So if this is something that you guys are really digging, definitely please let us know in the comments below. Let us know when you're here live, because again, we like to share this information and let you know how you can easily use ZBrush to get all of this stuff built and, you know, just have fun while doing it. We're going to use it for your anime characters? Yes. Like I said, with the newsletter, we'll be dropping that stuff in the newsletter, so look out for that. It's the material as well as the BPR settings. that we just pretty much covered now. But if you don't want to wait for the newsletter, that's okay too. Just follow the steps, adjust it as you like. Bada bing, bada boom. You are good to go. All right. If you guys have any last questions, thank you guys so much for showing up to the How It's Made, building a tank. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys learned something. And also, too, hopefully you just had fun, because that's really what I love about this series, is the ability to not only hang out with you, but to have fun while doing it. So you guys will take it easy. I'm going to go to lunch. I'm hungry. But I will talk to all of you guys later. Yes, hit that subscribe button, the like button, the bell, the notification, all that good stuff. Please, please. If you guys do that, then I can come back. They will let me come back. All right, everybody, that is it. And we will talk to you later. Bye, 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 bye.